Do you have the courage to think? Because if you can think, you can change, you can move, you can evolve, you can grow, you can become. You are one idea away. Your credit is not a problem. Your car is not a problem. Your situation is not a problem. Your thoughts are the problem. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he.
There's a simple but often overlooked premise in business, and that is new growth comes from new thinking. New growth comes from new thinking. Expecting new growth for your business without new ways of thinking about it is like a farmer expecting new crops to grow without first planting the seeds.
So now is the season for you to move distractions, confusion, turmoil out of the way to find a peaceful place where you can meditate and think, what am I going to do at this season in my life? What am I going to do with this age and stage? What could I do with the circumstances in my life? What would you do with what you have to make it better? One thought.
It's the time if you want to be on top of your game. Now listen, this is not for everybody. The masses will use their time being a spectator. We have been conditioned and programmed to be spectators, to watch people live their dreams. You want to use your time living the kind of life that people watch you. You want to use your time perfecting your skill and your passion to stand out as an expert.
Everything starts in the thoughts you think. You are no better than the thoughts you think. If you think little, you go little. If you think weak, you go weak. If you think up, you go up. One thought. Slap yourself in the head. One thought. That's how close you are.
Use your time to operate from that consciousness of Henry David Thoreau, who said, do not go where the path may lead, go where there is no path and leave a trail. If you just decide, I'm going to find something that I would enjoy doing, and then I'm going to carve out the time and have a schedule that I'm working on it every day, listen to me, nobody can touch you. There's no competition. There's no excuse today for not becoming successful. Even if you've just lost your job, even if you're going through foreclosure and eviction, you can come back. You have no competition because the majority of the people throw their time away and they have nothing to show for it.
When you think about growing, whenever you're faced with a situation that you can't control and you make the decision to grow, it kind of trims the fat, right? The things that are not important, the things that are no longer something that you got to just focus on every single day. I'm talking about foolishness, right? When you make that decision to grow, it's just like in marriage, just like being a father. You zoom in on that thing on such a level to where it's like opposition is what it is, the challenge is what it is, but every single day I'm going to come in and be intentional about growth. And when you change the way you think about growth, right? When you change your perspective, how you see things, the opportunity for growth, man, is limitless. Every single day, you got all of us in the world that are dealing with a similar situation, but people are responding differently. It's like the quote that says, we all got problems, but what makes us different is how we solve them, right? Everybody is faced with different situations, but what makes them different is how they solve them. And so for me, man, the greatest thing that's happened as a result of this pandemic, of this corona, of this COVID, is every single day I wake up and I'm intentional about my growth. I'm intentional about it.
You see, the largest gap between successful and unsuccessful people in life is the thinking gap. I'm not talking about being smart. I'm not talking about an IQ. I'm talking about how you think, how I think. Successful people think differently than unsuccessful people. The most important real estate, the most important real estate in life is 6 inches between the ears. How we think.
Becoming a better thinker is worth your effort because the way you think really impacts every aspect of your life. It doesn't matter whether you are a business person, teacher, parent, scientist, pastor, or corporate executive. Good thinking will make you a better business person, teacher, parent, scientist, pastor, or corporate executive. Good thinking creates the foundation for good results. If you don't like the crop you're reaping, you need to change the seed you're sowing. When it comes to achievement, the seed is your thinking. Good thinking increases your potential. If your thinking shapes who you are, then it naturally follows that your potential is determined by your thinking. Achieving your potential comes from making progress, and progress is often just a good idea away. For many people, the greatest detriment to their success tomorrow is their thinking today. If their thinking is limited, so is their potential. But if people can keep growing in their thinking, they will constantly outgrow what they're doing. Good thinking produces more good thinking if you make it a habit. Albert Einstein observed, "The solutions to the problems we face today cannot be solved on the same level of thinking we were at when we created them." Look around you, and you'll see that it is true. The world keeps getting more and more complicated. The good news is that no matter how complicated life gets or how difficult problems may seem, good thinking can make a difference if you make it a consistent part of your life.
It's easy to go around thinking that the obstacle is too big, we'll never get well, this virus is going to get the best of us. We wonder why we don't have any strength, why we can't get ahead. It's because our thoughts are limiting us. We draw in what we constantly think about. You can't think defeat and have victory. You can't think weakness and have strength. Your life is going to follow your thoughts. Instead of thinking these weak, defeated, not able to thoughts, you need to think power thoughts. This sickness is no match for me. This virus can't stop my destiny. This trouble at work is not how my story ends. Victory starts in our mind. Success, breakthroughs, new levels depends on our thinking. Be careful what you think, because your thoughts run your life. Are your thoughts helping you or hurting you? Are you thinking power thoughts, victory thoughts, well-able thoughts? Or are you thinking defeated thoughts? I'll never get well, never accomplish my dreams, never break this addiction. You're choosing which direction your life is going to go. Pay attention to what you're dwelling on. Don't just think any thought that comes to mind. If it's negative, discouraging, fearful, don't give it the time of day.
To be productive, to make an impact, to create a presence. That's why we're here. To work, to leave our mark. And so do an evaluation of yourself. Ask yourself, if you look at 24 hours, how much time do you spend developing your mind? How much time do you spend learning a new skill? The economy has changed. 47 million jobs will be lost to artificial intelligence. Majority of money being made on the planet is being made virtually at home on a computer. The game has changed. And I'm encouraging you, get around people who are using their time productively, because people rub off on you. When you know your purpose, that narrows how you use your time. How are you using your time? You have something special. You have the ability to do more than you can ever begin to imagine.
And I know this isn't like breakthrough news to anyone, but I think that we often forget this. And we're gonna face hardships. We can't avoid pain. We can't avoid trouble. All we can do is prepare our mindset so that we don't get overwhelmed by our circumstances. A lot of people, when they have a negative circumstance take place in their life, they react negatively to it. I mean, that seems almost natural. In fact, that is natural. Something negative happens to me, my reaction back to it is negative. But this is why you have to change your mindset.
And I'm saying to you, if you keep going, if you keep looking for a way, where there's a will, there's a way. If you keep moving, If you keep falling forward, if you keep getting back up, something's going to happen. Bob Marley said something I like. He said, you never know how strong you are until being strong is all you have. You never know how strong you are until being strong is all you have. It's your only option. And you'll discover, if you don't panic, if you don't run, you'll discover you are stronger than you give yourself credit for being.
Hi, welcome back to Mind Control.
Bang on the door. I'm the oldest, they're screaming, so I go answer the door. And I answer the door, and standing there is this giant man. It was this little boy, and he's holding this huge box of food. And beside him on the ground was a black pot with an uncooked turkey in it. And he said, is your father home? And I said, just one moment. I was like, this is a gift from God. This is going to change it all. This is going to make my mom and dad happy. It's going to be unbelievable. So I go, and my father is screaming at my mother through a closed door to the bedroom door. And I said, Dad, there's a guy at the door. And he goes, go, you answer the door. I said, I did. He's got to see you. So I kind of teased. I said, Dad, you got to come. So he said, fine. He made one last yell at her, and he walks to the door. And I'm waiting there, just can't waiting to see his face. And my dad opens the door, and this man's standing there with this big box of food. And my father did not get happy. He looked at this man, and he raised his voice to him, and he said, look, we don't take charity. And then he took the door to slam it in the man's face. But the man was a good-sized man. He put his foot there and smacked his foot and bounced back over. He said, sir, this is not charity. Everybody has tough times. Somebody knows you're having a tough time, and they want you to have a magical Thanksgiving. I'm just the delivery guy. He said, please take this. And my father said, we don't take charity. He went to slam it again. And this time the guy put his shoulder against it so he couldn't do it. And then my father's staring at him. It's like these two males starting to get this intense mode. And one just trying to give a gift, and I'm freaking. And then the guy said something that I'll never forget, and in moments I wished he hadn't said. But he found a way to force my father. He's holding this thing, and he looked at me, and then he looked at my dad, and he said, don't make your family suffer because of your ego. Now my dad's level of energy increased, but he was also trapped. You get it? So he took the food, slammed it on our table, and slammed the door in the man's face, and never even thanked him. And then I thought, years I figured out, our whole life is shaped by decisions. That's what we've talked about today, right? But there's 3 decisions you're making every moment you're alive. And the way you make these 3 decisions shapes your destiny. First decision we're all making every moment is, what are you going to focus on? What are you going to focus on? I realized that my father's life and my life ended up very different because we made that day 3 decisions very differently. He decided to focus on the fact that he has not fed his family. And the second question you got to decide, every moment you're alive, including this moment, what are you going to focus on? Second question is, as you're focusing on, what does this mean? What does it mean? And the bottom line on meaning is, if you think about it, you get to make up the meaning, and most people pick the worst one, don't they? That day, my father decided to focus on the fact he hadn't fed his family, and I know what meaning he gave because he said it out loud over and over again, that he was worthless because he had not taken care of his family. And then the final, most important decision you make every moment you're alive, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I'll tell you what he decided to do. He decided to leave our family shortly thereafter, which at the time was the worst experience of my life. It was the most crushing experience I felt. I realized in that moment that the worst day of my life, my father leaving, had actually been the best day of my life. Because if I hadn't had that experience, I wouldn't be here today. And now because of that, I'm getting to live this life. I have the desire and the drive and the want to give it this way.
Life is going smoothly, then the bottom falls out. Everything is coming up roses, then the bottom falls out. That life starts going your way finally, then the bottom falls out.
And when we begin to understand and know that, accepting that reality, that we will never ever have things just on an even keel all the time, that you're going to have some ups and you're going to have some downs. But during those down moments, that's where the growth takes place. That's where the work is.
You worked on a job 35 years and now you're laid off. You planned for life to work a certain way and then the bottom falls out. You're looking for this, and God sends that. that even though you love God, does not mean that the bottom will not fall out.
You might be going through a season, since darkness is the absence of a thing. You might be going through a season of the absence of a thing that you legitimately need, but it ain't over.
You have to be awfully immature to think that every day is going to be a good day. Some days are better than other days. And some days, if it ain't one thing, it's another.
One of the things that we know about life is that it is always changing. Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down. Sometimes things go real well, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes you're happy, and sometimes you're sad. Now that's that thing called life.
You may have to function for a while without the absence of the thing you adore. But it's not over. It's just that God has created the treasures of darkness. And in order to create the treasures of darkness, he has to take away light so that he can incubate what he's about to do in your life.
And I'm going to tell you right now, it won't be easy. It will be hard because life is hard. That's what life is. And these challenges, they're going to do their best to take you down. Do not let them. Stand up, dig in.
In the end, we are only as strong as the adversity that we overcome. The pain of the adversity will eventually subside, but the lesson will always remain. And that lesson will strengthen you to endure your next battle, this time stronger and wiser than before.
Line up those problems and confront them. Face them. Do not let them bring you down. In fact, let those challenges raise you up. Let them elevate you. Let their demands and their trials make you stronger. Let the adversity you face today turn you into a better person tomorrow.
The way you handle your good years will determine if you survive the bad years. In other words, you must learn to maximize the positive. If you don't learn how to maximize the good times and minimize the bad times, then you won't make it through the famine.
Victory begins in the dark. And we all go through these times where we don't think it's going to work out. Seasons where nothing is changing. We're being our best, but the business is not growing. The fact is, light is on the way. What God promised you is en route. You've been believing for things to change in your marriage, your finances, with an addiction. It seems permanent. You've already entered a new day. You've already passed midnight. You can't see it yet, but victory is on the way.
Life and business is like the changing seasons. You cannot change the seasons. That's impossible. You can't rearrange the seasons. The seasons are going to come however they're going to come, and you cannot change that. So you cannot change the seasons. But make this note, you can change yourself. That was the message I got when I was 25 years old with someone who took the time to teach me. You can change yourself.
Now, instead of complaining about the dark, have a new perspective. The dark means the sun is on the way up. The promise is about to come forth. Who can stop the sun from rising each morning? Who can keep light from breaking forth over the horizon? All the forces of darkness cannot stop what God has ordained for you. They cannot keep what He promised from coming to pass. In the face of that darkness, when you don't see any light, get in agreement with God.
See, anybody can feel good when they have their health, their bills are paid. Anybody could be positive then. Anybody can have a larger vision then. Anybody can have faith under those kinds of circumstances. The real challenge of growth, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, comes when you get knocked down. Somebody said that adversity introduces a man to himself or a woman.
Adversity is a gift. Embrace it. Trying to avoid adversity would be like trying to avoid the tide while swimming in the ocean. But like the ocean, if you can learn to embrace the tide of adversity, you will eventually learn to let it lift you up, and you can ride the wave to shore unscathed. And in that moment, take a look around, because the view that you have after you've overcome your adversity is absolutely breathtaking.
Thank you so much for watching till the end. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments section. Please also like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and families.
Are we so immature that we can't hear different opinions? Even those we don't like, sits back in amazement, horrified, call the police, and make our own judgments on what's being said and the validity of it. Do we not have the maturity to put forward another counter argument, which, if we are confident in what we're saying, will demolish that which we don't agree with? Anyone that wants to silence people rather than argue their case can't have much confidence in their own case, surely. And once you go down this road of giving authority the right to decide what can be said, what opinions can be had, you are in a tyranny, and that's where we're going now. But it's bigger than that, because it's not just political correctness. You can't say this, you can't say that, you must say that. It's also the fact that humanity has been hoaxed on a monumental scale in relation to freedom of expression and freedom of information. And it's been done out of an area that I call the devil's playground. It's better known as Silicon Valley. What's happened is, when you do the research, intelligence organizations like the CIA in the United States, the National Security Agency, and the Pentagon, through an organization called DARPA, the Technological Development Arm of the Pentagon, they began seed funding technology and companies to develop what has become now known as the Internet, and an outgrowth of that, what became known as social media, and the search engine technology, which eventually became known as Google. All those were seed funded by this military intelligence network. And when they were selling it, because you can't show something's real face at the start, otherwise people will reject it and it won't get anywhere. You have to put another face to the world. So it was Google. Oh yeah, Google, yeah, we just go to search engine, we can find what we like, that's great, hey. And social media, oh, you post to your friends, you can say what you like, there's no censorship, isn't it great? And then it builds, and then it builds, and then it builds, and now you've reached a point now with Facebook where it claims 2.2 billion active users in a global population of 7.5 billion. You have this 90% monopoly on search engines, searches of Google. You have YouTube, which has got basically a monopoly on the posting of internet videos, which is owned by Google. And once this monopolistic situation was reached, then they started saying, okay, now we've got this much control, we're going to start deciding what you see and what you don't see.
And when you make up your mind to be defined by a vision of the future instead of the memories of the past. All you have to do is make a decision, just with a level of intensity that has such a strong amplitude of energy that in that moment your body begins to respond to your mind. In other words, the choice that you make becomes a decision that you never forget. It becomes an experience. And the stronger you have that emotion, the more you are going to pay attention to what you're focusing on in your mind. And now you're beginning to remember your future. Long-term memories are created by strong, highly charged emotional events. The stronger the emotional charge you feel from some event, the more you pay attention to the cause, and the brain takes a snapshot, and that's called a memory. So then, how do you change the memory of the past? You got to start remembering your future, and you got to come out of your resting state, and that moment has to define you. So everybody's done this, and you just got to have a clear intent on what you want. And so, learn, study, get something in your brain that's going to stimulate you about what's possible. And then begin to dream or begin to build a model of what it could look like, and don't let go of it. And begin to experience the emotions of how you feel when it happens. And teach your body emotionally what that future is going to feel like. So it only requires two things: a clear intention, that's a function of a coherent, organized brain, and an elevated emotion, which is a function of your heart and your body. And when you combine those two, you're going to change your energy. And when you change your energy, you're going to change your life. But that's the start, because it's so easy to forget your vision. It's easier to forget it than remember it, right? It's easier to believe in your past than to believe in your future. It's easier to romance your past than to romance your future, or fall in love with your past than it is your future. But people who start falling in love with their future more than their past falls away. So then, you got to write down the thoughts in that day that are not going to sneak by your awareness unchecked. Like, I can't, it's too hard, I'll never change, what's wrong with me, it's my mother's fault, my father was an alcoholic, my ex was a whatever. You gotta be so conscious of those thoughts that you're not going to let them slip by and go unconscious of them. You got to decide what choices you got to stop making. You got to stop behaving a certain way. You got to stop having the same experiences and staying away from those people that create those same experiences. And you got to watch those emotions that are going to bring you to a lower denominator, because the moment you start feeling suffering or pain or frustration, you just disconnected from the energy of your future, and now you're back to the energy of your past. So,
and that is to fully realize that there are two dimensions, so to speak, to who you are. The one that is defined in form, which includes the physical form and the psychological form and the thinking entity. So your consciousness has the two dimensions. There's an intermediate area, but we don't need to go there. There's the conscious dimension of thinking, and that creates your conventional sense of identity. And there is the deeper space where there is a vast consciousness that is not defined in form. So there's the two of you, the known, the person, and the unknown, the undefined, or as the Buddha called it, the unmanifested, the unborn, the uncreated. And the Buddha added, this is one of the sutras in my free translation. So he said, there is the unborn, the unmanifested, the uncreated. If there were not, sorry, the sutras are a little bit repetitive, if there were not the unborn, the unmanifested, the uncreated, there would be no escape from the born, the manifested, and the created. And I'm adding in my free translation, and you would be completely stuck in it and with it. So there is a dimension in every human that is far deeper than what you conventionally consider is the I. So you can say there is the I that is defined through thought, and there is a deeper I that is not defined. And the purpose of your existence really is, in evolutionary terms, is to find that deeper being, the undefined, the unknown, and bring that into this dimension and into your life. And you all have made the discovery already that you don't need to think continuously, and that your deeper sense of who you are does not depend on what your mind is saying about who you are. There is a more immediate, much more real sense of I than you could ever find through thinking about who you are.
You want to be able to listen a little bit because somebody's going to give you a gem, but nobody knows but you. You can't get advice on what you should do with your life. Nobody knows what you are. Like even sometimes you don't really even know what you are. You got to take your shot. And it's like, as much as you want people to agree and you want the people around you to be supporting your dreams, it's not going to be like that all the time. You got to do it alone. And people will help you, and when you get the ball rolling, people will jump on. But if you don't believe, nobody else is going to believe. People come along because your belief is so insane, that your belief is so strong. So a dude screamed to me the other night, "Hey, Will, I want to be an actor, man. I want to be an actor just like you." You know, usually people say stuff to me like that. I'm like, "Yeah, man, you always give them an encouraging word." But I was just sitting here thinking, and it dawned on me, 99% of people that say stuff like that are not willing to do what it takes to make their dreams come true. The Marines have a saying, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die, right? So if the world is attacking you and the world wants to fight you and the world's trying to hold you down, so you're going to kick yourself in you're going to stop yourself from getting what you dream. Self-discipline is the center of all material success. You cannot win the war against the world if you can't win the war against your own mind. Fail early, fail often, fail forward. You know, it's always a little bit frustrating to me when people have a negative relationship with failure. Failure is a massive part of being able to be successful. You have to get comfortable with failure. You have to actually seek failure. Failure is where all of the lessons are. Successful people fail a lot. They fail a whole lot more than they succeed, but they extract the lessons from the failure and they use that the energy and they use the wisdom to come around to the next phase of success. You gotta take a shot. You have to live at the edge of your capabilities. You gotta live where you're almost certain you're going to fail. That's the reason for practice. Practice is controlled failure. Your failure actually helps you to recognize the areas where you need to evolve.
You know, we're all writing a book. What's your book look like? You got a bunch of chapters in your book, but when they close that book, how good was the book? How good was your book? What was the ending to your book? If the ending to my book can be so amazing because of all that was done, not the money, all that was accomplished, all of the things that can be associated with you and your existence become a part of the chapters in your book. So my drive is about my book. That's the thing. All I'm doing is sparking the awareness in others to go, why not? Why can't I create? Why can't I start? Why can't I be a business? Why can't I be a CEO? Why can't I be a tech? Why can't I? That some people just don't understand they can do. Because I never was content with doing just 1, 2, or 3. Why not? I'm genuinely happy. Discovery makes me happy. Like when you find different things to be excited about, it makes me happy.
Couple's been fighting and you walk into a room and you think, wow, you can cut the air with a knife. It's because you can feel the residual energy in the room from the exchange the couple's been having. You can feel the energy they've been putting out of their bodies, the energy they've been releasing through their hearts. You know, your heart is simply an electromagnetic generator. That's what it does. You know, your heart is the power source of your body, not only because it pumps the blood around your body, but also because it creates the electromagnetic field that your body needs for you to exist. And this is the way it works. And when you really begin to look into it and look into it really deeply, you begin to realize that this electromagnetic field that your heart is generating, this energy, is in fact a language. And it's the language of feeling and emotion, the language of electromagnetism, and it is the main way that you are communicating with the energetic field around you. The problem is that many people simply don't know this conversation is going on. You know, many people don't take it into account, even when they're having trouble with their lives and they're trying to fix themselves up and get positive about something or create something good in their lives or create some direction for themselves or find something positive. They very often don't take into account the energetic conversation that they're having. You know, what is their deepest intentions in what they're doing? You know, is what they're doing, are they doing it for profit, for self-service, or you know, what are they doing? What is your real motivation in why you do what you do?
That we should plant trees under whose shade we do not plan to sit. And he was speaking about this principle of selfless sacrifice. And that kind of just penetrated me right there. When he said the words selfless sacrifice, for the first time in my life, I felt a thrill about something that I'd never felt before. I thought, wow, giving up everything you have for the service of others sounds like the best thing you could possibly do. And I don't know why I had that thought, because I wasn't a spiritual kid growing up. I wasn't a religious kid growing up. I wasn't even a good kid growing up. I was just a rebel, a misfit, trying things out, an experimenter, which I still consider myself. And so what I started to do is I was interning at companies and firms and corporates, thinking I was getting a grad job afterwards. And then I'd spend the rest of my summer holidays interning in India, living with him as a monk. So I'd use all my summer and Christmas holidays to just be out there with the monks. And he introduced me to another 200 to 500 monks that were just like him, just as smart, just as bright, giving up everything they had and using all their skills to make the world a better place.
I want to go back to why that resonated with you, which is really surprising. So, and maybe you're just, you know, so far ahead of where I was at the time, but that would have sounded absurd to me at that time.
Yeah.
Did you already have a sense of unease that like I'm a rebel without a cause, or like, what was it about that moment? And you seem very aware of yourself. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping that some of that awareness is present then. Like, what was that moment?
I believe the moment was I've always had friends who are older than me. And I could see a lot of them in the most successful careers, successful jobs, beautiful partners, whatever it was. But I saw a sense of lack of fulfillment, meaning, and purpose in their lives. And I've always been an observer, and I would see these people who are like 5 years older than me, 7 years older than me, maybe 10 years older than me. And I'd be watching them and go, is that the life I want? And often the advice I give to people today is fast forward where you are, look at yourself in 10, 15, 20 years time, and ask yourself the question, is that where I want to be? If you're in a company, look at the person who's 20 years ahead of you and ask yourself, is that where I want to be? If you're in a startup, look at where other startups have got to in similar roles and go, is that where I want to be? And if the answer is no, then you need to find a new path. And for me, the answer at that time from observing was no. The path that my parents or society or the university I went to or the community I had that was carving out for me, it didn't feel like the path for me. So I was almost seeking an alternative or a new path.
I was just so fortunate that it happened to be an uplifting, powerful path, as opposed to something that could have actually taken me down the wrong road, because that could have been possible too.
So walk me through the first time you step off the plane in India. It's summer.
And so I'm living there, I'm waking up, I'm almost doing all the practices, just as if you were shadowing a CEO. I'm just shadowing a monk. And so I'm just shadowing his lifestyle. So we wake up, he's like one of the most elite monks. So we're waking up at like 2 a.m. every day after sleeping at like 9 or 10 p.m. And then we study these ancient Vedas, which are 5,000 plus years old, together. And we spend 2 hours, and I'm studying with the best of the best here. So he can like analyze and assimilate, and I'm learning fast, taking notes. Then 4 a.m. we go to collective meditation. We do those practices with the other monks as well. 6 a.m. we have personal meditation. So I'm literally going through the life of a monk and falling in love with it step by step, going, wow, I've never had this experience before. I just threw myself in, and I was practicing it to the T, right? It wasn't like, oh no, my back hurts when I sit on the floor, I can't stay here for too long. Or, you know, today when people are like, oh, I can't meditate for longer than 2 minutes. I was like, no, I'm gonna do it for 2 hours. If that's what they're doing, I'm gonna give it a go. Because I can only test, the hypothesis will only be true if the experiment is carried out to the degree that they are. So if the hypothesis is, if you live like this, you'll be happy, more fulfilled, then I want to do that.
All right, so let's explore this then through the lens of creating one's own perfect life.
Yes.
Which is pretty interesting, especially because I think this is so accurate to the way that most people are. It's not like, oh, there's some grand missing thing in my life, but you took that first action. So codify this for me, or for anybody that they don't know what their ideal life looks like. They just know that they're not living it yet.
Mm-hmm.
So step number one is take it seriously. To find out if the hypothesis is true or not, you have to take the experiment. You have to do it sincerely.
Mm-hmm.
What comes after that?
I think even one step before that is opening yourself up to new role models and new experiences. See, we live in echo chambers. We're just surrounded by the same thinking. How often do you bump into a monk? You know, it just doesn't happen. No one has a dinner party and goes, oh yeah, we just invited the monk, you know, from town, like the local monk. No one ever does that. And so we meet people who are just like us most of the time.